What is up, everyone? Welcome to TCR Live after a very frustrating game. We will get into it. As you see, I am flying solo today. Kyler Bird could not join me, but he will be back. So we're going to talk about this game. This season has been a tire fire of a season, I think, for this team in many ways, considering the expectations going into it. Year three of a rebuild. This is the year they're supposed to, be a playoff team, and they have clearly not done that. And there's so many other things going on that we have been talking about, and we will get into it. Talk about this game, and at least from my perspective, what it means, what it shows us, why things went the way they did, in my opinion. And then kind of where to go from there moving forward, right? Real quick, I want to say hey to all the good folks that are jumping in the chat. I know we'll have more coming in. We have the Silver Wolf, let's go, who is always hanging out with us. Such a great support of the channel. Silver Wolf is the man, always retweets everything I tweet out, is always here in the chat. I want you to know I appreciate you for all that you do hanging out with us. We have Lance, who has been also a long time, part of this community. Thank you for hanging out with us, Lance. Lance saying we're going to be fine. Don't, and he correct that later. Don't burn it all down. I'm sure the conversations are happening. The film is being broken down and adjustments are being made. The biggest issue this season, injury bug. I generally agree with you not to burn it down in terms of the whole organization, the whole, plan. I like people say tear it down and rebuild. This team does not need to rebuild. They have built depth under Monty. Now, as we've talked about the quarterback situation, the reporting is that, they're going to have conversations with Kyler Murray, that the odds are they're moving on from him. Anyone who's been kind of part of this community for a while knows that I've been kind of a defender of Kyler. I do think he's a talented quarterback, but at this point, I've also come to the point where I do think everyone needs a fresh start between Kyler Murray and the organization. I think Jacoby Brissett has, had some good games. And I think what we've seen is that his, the conventional play style, standing in the pocket, works better for the system, it seems. I think Kyler Murray is going to be fine, but I think he needs a change of scenery. But that's not a total rebuild, right? You've got to figure out the quarterback situation. I'm not ready to fire the coaching staff. I know some people are. But I definitely believe in the roster they've built. So I generally agree with you that this season is lost to me, but I'm definitely not ready to throw in the towel in terms of the plan, if that makes sense. We have gaming with Sid Apple, or I don't Sid Apple. I hope I got it right. Thank you for hanging out with us. What's up? Appreciate you. We got my good buddy Zach Payo time. Yo and hello. Zach's got a question. Is the vibe of the Cards are one loss away from Gannon getting fired? I think there are some fans that feel like that, but that does not feel like the vibe. You never know. Sometimes just things happen, right? But the vibe does not feel like they're going to make a move mid-season. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Clearly, I'm not inside the building. There are some people who probably have better feel of what's going on as far as that goes. But my sense, at least from everything, I'm seeing in the media and just the way it feels to me, is that it's not that situation. I do think I think there's been too much invested in this. And listen, the owner isn't, he's already paid out some contracts with coaches he's fired. I don't think they're going to make any kind of move mid-season. I think they're going to assess everything at the end of the season, right? Lance saying, however, I was a huge fan of Cliff, and they fired him for not winning after injured and rebuilding. Yeah, so we'll see what happens, right? And thank you for hanging out with us, right? And Lance saying they chose to stick with Kyler plan and fire Cliff. Look where that got us. I'm still not sold that Cliff was going to be the answer. I mean, I think I know he's had some success in Washington, at least a little bit. I still think there's some things about his system with what it does with the receivers that don't work great in the NFL. Maybe he's going to make some adjustments. We'll see. But there's some things that definitely need to change, right? Zach saying makes sense as long as they have gone and has a locker room, which it's hard to know if you aren't in there. I don't think he's lost the locker room. I know some fans feel like that, but sometimes fans are going to fan and are prone to hyperbole. But let's talk about this game, right? The Cardinals, this was really the first blowout loss of the season, right? To Seattle. They were down, was it 28-0 at half? It was ugly, right? And then, the Cardinals came back, put up 22 points, ended up 44-22. But, it was not a close game by any stretch of the imagination. It was an ugly game, really bad. A lot of things went wrong. It was the biggest blowout, but I still don't think it was the worst loss of the season, because the worst loss of arguably the decade was the Tennessee loss, right? A team that we were supposed to blow out, a team that is still looking like one of the worst teams in the NFL. And we had this nice big lead, and then we all know what happened, right? Just a real, almost a comedically bad series of events, right? So, I still think that was the worst loss of the season, the Tennessee one, because Seattle's a really good team, right? I mean, there's an argument to be made that they might be the best team in the NFC right now. I mean, you can make that argument, and I'm surprised by it, as much surprised by it as anyone. But this is a really good team in Seattle. We, as Lance pointed out, we have injuries, so yet it's not an excuse. We should have been more competitive. But if this team were a winning team and had won other games, if this team had 5 wins, 6 wins going in here, and we got blown out like this, you'd be disappointed. But good teams have a game like this every year, right? Even teams that win 10, 11 games will have a game that looks like this, where it's like, just a stinker, right? But the problem is this team doesn't have 5 or 6 wins, right? So with the context, it just was really bad. But I still think the Tennessee game was their worst loss of the season. A couple other comments. Lance saying, Kyler yelling with Cliff, him cutting his legs from locker room. What's your take, Joe? Do you think Kyler yelled at Cliff? Cliff lost the locker room. I really don't think that did it. Players and coaches have disagreements on the sidelines all the time. If the team's winning, it's not as big of a deal. I really don't think that was. I think Cliff Kingsbury, and I watched the documentary about Johnny Manziel, and they interviewed Cliff Kingsbury in that a few points. And I really think Cliff Kingsbury is such a player's coach, a vibes coach, and I don't think there's strict discipline in anything that if he lost the locker room, I don't think it's Kyler undermining him like that. I really think it was much more just not enough, maybe too much of a vibes coach, in my view, right? And whereas Gannon, he's still got some of that vibes to him, but he's definitely been about, discipline and accountability and expectations. Now, listen, it hasn't gone well this year, but I just don't think that incident is what did it. I don't know. We're trying to assess the psychology of a team. I could absolutely be wrong, but to me, I don't think it was. If anything, I think it was more a sign or a symptom of what was already going on. I think that you could argue it was, but I don't think it was the catalyst. That's just my opinion for what it's worth. Gaming said, hey, Joe, who do you want as the next OC to, assuming Petson gets fired, Dable or Stefanski? Oh, man. Right. Listen, I if it's between those two, I'd probably take Dable. I mean, Stefanski, Stefanski, they have the connection, so maybe that's more likely, right? The system, and obviously, and look, former head coaches who were coordinators and then get fired because they kind of don't make it as head coaches often make some of the best coordinators, right? So if one of those guys came here to be the coordinator, reestablishes themselves, I would love that. So I think Stefanski seems maybe more likely with the connections. I kind of like Daboll a little better, but either one of them, I think if that's what happens, I would take it, right? Is that similar to Gannon slapping DeMarcado? Is that just a matter of time before Gannon is gone? Regardless, I think that was a mistake, right? And listen, I know people have some different opinions about are we too soft or whatever, and I don't want to get into any of that kind of nonsense. But it was a bad look. I don't think, obviously, these are grown men. He didn't legitimately hurt him, so I don't think it was bad at that level, but it was a bad look in that Gannon kind of losing his cool. Now, maybe some people feel like they needed that. The yelling is fine. The slapping was probably a little too far from my view. Um, I don't. I mean, I don't think that I don't think that will be the thing. Clearly he might have already been fired. If he loses his job, it's going to be all of it. They're going to assess it all, right? So, who knows? All right. Silver, if we're blaming injuries for the failure, who brought in the current training and conditioning staff? Gannon. Yeah, I mean, maybe you could look at it that way. They did. We had Buddy Morrison. They brought in some new folks. So I don't want to blame injuries. Like they have had some injuries. There were some problems before the injuries. Like the offensive line just wasn't up to, wasn't ready, wasn't just not ready to do what they need to do. The run blocking's been horrible to this game, the pass blocking, but they also built depth at other spots, right? So they had enough depth on this roster that if things like the run blocking were working the way they should have been able to withstand, right? Zach saying, I love listening, but I do probably disagree about the Seahawks being the best team. I wonder who you think is the best team in the NFC, KO, my good friend. So yeah. So Grandizer, thanks for being here, doing what you do. We appreciate you posting all that you do as one of the best mod in the business, and saying hi to our common friend, Peo. So I want to get a little bit into, I thank you for all your comments and for hanging out with us tonight. I want to get to a couple of my observations about the game. Game overall, obviously, like what we talked about. I mean, to me, it was the big. I think it's clearly the biggest blow. Before this game, the Cardinals could say they hadn't lost a game by more than 4 points. Can't say that now, right? Now, again, we lost to a really good team here, and in a different context where this Cardinals team had pulled out those. If this Cardinals team had won more of those close games and had 5 or 6 wins going in here, this loss would be disappointing, but I wouldn't be panicking because, again, good teams will have a stinker like this. But this Cardinals team hasn't won the close ones, so they don't get that grace. But when I look at the game, to me, there's a couple things that definitely were the issue with this game, okay? To me, the biggest issue was the pass blocking. When you look at the PFF grades, like offensive pass blocking grades, it was really bad on the interior. Now, Paris Johnson Jr., did a decent job. He is who he is, right? A really good left tackle. His pass blocking grade was 73.9, solid. Jonah Williams, who I know is much maligned by Cardinals fans, still didn't do a bad job his pass blocking grade was 71.5. His run blocking grade wasn't great. It was 56.6. But the interior, which is where that pressure came when the sacks came, right? The interior pass blocking grades were horrific, and the eye test lined up with that. Evan Brown had a PFF pass blocking grade of 27.9. That, if you look at grades, that's the dark red. That's ugly. That's just a really bad grade. Will Hernandez, 46.7, not good. Hjalte Froholt, 49.9, right? And if you've been listening for a while, like 60 is sort of this average baseline, didn't do anything bad or good, right? And so, the pass blocking interior was really horrendous. And, Masaki Felix, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you being here, my friend. The SO line has been bad all year. Nothing new here. Yeah, it has been bad all line, but there's one thing that's new here. And what's new here is it was the pass blocking that was worse than the run blocking. It has been bad, but this offensive line's been decent in pass blocking up to this point. It's the run blocking that has kind of been really bad. The run blocking wasn't good. Most of the guys were in 50s. The best was Paris Johnson with 66.1 run blocking. But the thing that is new here is that it was the pass blocking that fell apart. Okay. And the interior, and we saw it. Those two big fumbles, Jacoby Brissett gets hit, and then, before he throws the ball, the turnovers they pick it up, run them in, both of them. That's 14 points, right? That the defense didn't even give up, right? And that puts you in a big hole. And, Jacoby Brissett's grade for the game wasn't great. It was actually kind of, one of his worst this season. His PFF grade for the game, was 47.2, and his passing grade is 44.9. Now, I will say too, the eye test for me, I actually feel like Jacoby Brissett, aside from those fumbles actually played better than that. He threw the ball downfield, and he kept, he made some plays at points. And if, like Jacoby Brissett, one of the things about him is he really doesn't throw interceptions very often, right? He's really good about not throwing interceptions. He does hold on to the ball, which, some ways that's good, right? He stands tall in the pocket, holds on the ball, and gets rid of it the last second. But that does bring the risk of fumbles. In this case, those two fumbles. And like if those two fumbles hadn't happened, right, which to me, again, like, maybe you can argue he should have thrown it sooner, but he didn't have a ton of time and he tried to throw it. It was just a tick late. If that offensive line was giving him better protection and he didn't have those two fumbles, like who knows what those throws would have been, right? They might have, maybe interceptions, but with the way he doesn't throw them very often, that's not as super likely, right? So those might have been completions that move things down the field. And like if we didn't have those two interceptions or those two fumbles, and the other thing on the defense side that I'm going to talk about wasn't an issue, this might have been a very different game, right? Brissett did do enough to get us 22 points. If those two fumbles didn't happen, maybe it was enough, right? So, and Misaki Felix thinks he played awful, no check down hero ball all the time. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it was that bad, but he does stand in the pocket. But I think Kyler's much more of a hero ball player. But but to me, the pass blocking and the sacks and the fumbles was one of the biggest things, right? And Austin saying, Kyler would have been sacked 5+ times if he played. He had one of the worst sack rates in the NFL before he got injured. Yeah, so Brissett, I think has good pocket presence. He stands in there, waits the last second, delivers the ball, but that thing didn't do, really. But that game, obviously, those fumbles really made a big difference. So to me, the pass blocking was one of the biggest things in this game because, if you everything connects, right? And if those two fumbles had not occurred because if Brissett got better pass blocking and those two fumbles were incomplete passes or even a complete pass to keep the ball going and the team keeps a drive going, that's 14 points that's not on the board, and you sustain a drive, you keep the defense off and don't expose them as much. It could have been a very different game if you had better pass blocking. But the other thing was on the other side of the ball, we did have some cornerback injuries, right? And I tweeted out something about this that, listen, they have some depth. So I wasn't panicking about the cornerback depth because Denzel Burke has played well lately, right? Keitrell Clark has started for them. They had, Garrett Williams, but unfortunately, they did not get good play from the cornerbacks either, right? And listen, JSN and Cooper Kupp will make cornerbacks look bad. They have a couple really good receivers, right? JSN, arguably the best receiver in the NFL this year, statistically most yards. Cooper Kupp, a veteran, had a really good game. And you look at the coverage grades, they were not good for the cornerbacks, right? Denzel Burke had a 45.4. Garrett Williams had 29.8. He's coming back from injury, right? And and then Keitrell Clark had a 50.3, right? The safeties, Jalen Thompson was a little better in coverage, 71.3, Buda Baker, 62.9. But listen, I clearly having a couple of their starting cornerbacks probably affected that, playing against a really good offense, right? And so the coverage really struggled. And the defense in general, the defense gave up 30 points, even if you take away those two right fumbles. So I think, to me, the two really biggest issues in this game were the pass blocking and the coverage. And that, and that they got beat, right? So, it was a rough game, right? Really discouraging, frustrating, and it was ugly, right? Lance is asking about time to throw, right? I don't know. I don't know if I have time to get to the sack plays particularly, but I can real quick look at with Jacoby Brissett. What they will let me see if I go to his passing, I'm going to kind of look at his passing stats, his time to throw in this game in general, right? Looking at this game against Seattle, his time to throw was 2.87 seconds. Okay. If you look at that was the lowest time to throw of any game this season. Okay. If you look at, against Tennessee, well, he only had one attempt, and that was 3.9. But the games in which he started, right? 3.21 seconds to throw, time to throw, 2.99, 3.06, and then 2.87 with 4 sacks, right? So like he had less time to throw, more pressure, right? So like this, that I think that really kind of reiterates that pass blocking, right? So is really kind of the big issue, right? Going into the season, there was a lot of people raising the alarm about the offensive line. And I have to admit, I wasn't panicking about it. I felt like, well, the offensive line wasn't bad last year. They've got a lot of the same people here. Yeah, they didn't bring in they added one draft pick who's injured, who wasn't an impact player. He was a day 3 pick that you weren't expecting to be, a guy who's going to be a developmental depth. But I felt like, well, they were going to just pick up where they took last year, and they would have been okay. And I was wrong, right? It has been really bad. The run blocking, and I talked about this earlier. I think, to me, the thing that really kind of helped this thing come off the wheels is the run blocking not working early, because this offense was built around running the ball and then allowing Kyler to not have to, carry everything, right? If they were running the ball well, keeping drives going through running game, and then Kyler made some plays here and there, it was going to be a really efficient and effective offense. But they couldn't run the ball, and then they got injured. And now the pass blocking. Listen, I appreciate your apology. Yes, pass blocking is sorry that they sucked. They disappointed us all. Listen, I appreciate you owning that, right? at the pass blocking. And yeah, Connor makes the line look better. Absolutely. I will say, though, before he got injured, he was struggling too. And I think it was because a lot on the offensive line, right? Lance is asking, Joe, do you believe Gannon is due for an apology to the fans about how it continues to take the arrows for it, but we keep losing games? When he says it's on him, how long until something changes? I don't think he owes an apology to the fans for that. I maybe have a little bit different view about coach speak than some people. I like when when you're in PR, politics, if you are a business leader who speaks on behalf of your business, anytime you are a public facing representative of someone or something, like an organization, right? When you are a public-facing representative of a team, a business, anything, there's just the thing. You just don't give people things to latch onto in terms of things you say. Coach speak, PR speak. The smart way to approach those things is the boring way for us. They don't give us anything. They're not going to say the things we want to hear. He's going to continue to take the responsibility, because any other answer is not the right way to approach it. I know it's frustrating for us. We want to hear him say, like, man, you know what? Our offensive play calling's got to get better, right? We want to hear him say, but the only thing he's going to say is maybe, hey, players need to step up, because that's motivating the players, and that's acceptable, right? Within that place. But like, the whole thing is the right thing to say in those situations is the boring thing. And if you're the coach, you are going to defend your coaching staff. You're not going to throw them to the bus, and you will say that you've got their back right up until the minute it's time to fire them. And that's just how it goes, right? And I know as fans, it's frustrating. We feel like they're not being honest. But that's just how public image stuff works. That's just the game. That's the game. That's how it is. And it's not going to change. There are some coaches that might be a little more candid and they're refreshing. Like certainly Bruce Arians, right, was kind of like that. But he's just, I don't let that bother me. I understand that's just how the PR thing works, right? Rafael, thanks for being here, my friend. Rafael Castillo, Spencer Fano, here we come. Appreciate you hanging out with us, right? Accelerator, thanks for hanging out with us. A Raiders fan who, though, also roots for the Cardinals as long as they're not playing the Raiders. Off subject, but we should switch to the black helmets as our main helmets. The Cardinals look way tougher with the black background. I mean, as a Raiders fan, I'm sure you have a little bit of a bias, but listen, I do like those helmets. I got, one of those behind me, right? And, over par, I have no problem with Gannon's coach speak. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Again, like I said, I'm never going to get worked up about it because that's just when you're in those positions, that's what you do. And it's boring. It's frustrating for us, but that is the smart way to play it. Is you keep taking responsibility yourself and you have those conversations behind closed doors, right? That's just how it is, right? So, this is a frustrating season, and it's not going well. Clearly, what do we do now, right? And so what's next, right? Oh, we got Jackie. Thanks for being here. Jackie's got a question. Joe, question: do you think Gannon would shoot at McBride or Connor for doing the same thing Amari did? That's a really good question. I think because of the respect those players have earned, let's start with they're not going to do that, right? But let's say they did, right? I really think he would have that conversation behind closed doors. Coaches will say they're going to say they treat players all the same, but human nature is, and I don't even think this is necessarily a terrible thing. Someone like McBride or Connor have earned so much. They've earned respect and trust based on how they do things. I think a coach, if Connor somehow made that mistake, which I just don't think he would, but if he did, I think Gannon would understand that Connor is beating himself up about it way more and he's not going to have to do that. Like, he knows that Connor is going to probably get up and address the team as a leader and apologize if something like that happened. So I don't think either of them would do that, but I do think I think there would be a different response. I really do. Yeah. And listen, I get it. People want to see more emotion. I feel that, right? Mizaki still thinks Marvin's a bust. I know he's very critical of him. I don't think he's a bust, but listen, it has been disappointing, right? So listen, this is, it is what it is, right? This team has not done what expected. This was the biggest blowout of the season. It's just another it's just another very frustrating game in a very frustrating season, right? And I think in terms of where we go from here, like for the rest of the season, the only thing there is to do is to see if we can get things, at least like on track for next year, right? You need to try to get the things fixed that are broken and so that you can go into next season, on a better, ending the season better, right? And have something to build from. So right now it's just trying to fix everything, right? That's really all there is at this point. So Z, doorbell rings, package for Z. Great. What is it? Your ass is hand delivered sign here. I feel that. So listen, we'll hang out for a few more minutes if you got some questions. That's really the main things I wanted to go over, though. Listen, the pass blocking to me was the biggest issue. The injuries at cornerback and the coverage was another part of the issue against some really good receivers. The quarterback play wasn't great. Brissett, I think he looked better than the grade did, but it wasn't great, right? But it was a frustrating game, right? So, gaming says, Joe, you're not out of Monty, right? I'm not. No, I am not out of Monty. I have a critique. My critique is he didn't do enough with the offensive line this offseason, right? I think he's going to hit that hard this offseason. But I believe in what Monty has built, because when you look at his on his draft, his drafting, I know some people, might be critical of Marvin Harrison's performance so far, but he's drafted well. You've got guys like Denzel Burke had a bad game, but this is a 5th round pick who's had some good games for them, right? Garrett Williams, right, is a good player. We look at, I think Walter Nolan is going to be good. I know he's come back from injury. There's just Paris Johnson. There's a lot of good players and depth players who've played well, right? And I do think he's done a good job building some depth. They've got some nice players and there's some nice pieces. They need to get some things fixing to fix offensive line, but I believe in the way Monty's built it. And I've talked about this before. There are strategies for roster building and draft strategies that I believe in based on analytics data from other people. Sumer Sports has some great articles that were written by Eric Eager about how to approach free agency in the draft. And it has to do with certain positions and certain rounds and value and things like that. And, scarcity, and some positions are harder to find, so you've got to get them early, and premium versus non-premium positions, a whole lot of stuff with that. And when you look at all of those things, in my opinion, Monty is for the most part stuck with that playbook with very few exceptions. I think his drafting strategy is the right strategy. I think he's hit on some players. There's some players that maybe we need to see some more from. So I like what Monty has done. And I also like what he's done in free agency, aside from not doing enough for offensive line, right? I know some people want bigger splashes. I actually don't. I'm not a big splash free agency guy. I think there's certain ways you pick your spots. So I am not out on Monty, not at all. There's a question. Mizaki Felix asking my take on the K1 situation, and my take on it is, I think Kyler did everything they asked him to do. I think he worked hard. I think he put in a good faith effort to do what they wanted to do in the system, to be the guy they wanted and to play within the system. But I think as I've watched him this season in the system, he hasn't been horrible. Like, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't his best either. And I just think putting him in this kind of system isn't the best fit for him. I think he needs to go somewhere where they play to his strengths more, because what I saw with him is three types of plays: a big throw when it was there, sometimes like making a nice throw, running when it wasn't there and making a play. And those were the things that extended drives. But between those, I saw a lot of stretches where he'd stand back there and then take a sack because there was nothing there. And I do think that has something to do with the height. I think there's just enough, the height disadvantage and the visibility in the lanes. I just think, and it's not that you can't see there, but even like a 10% difference in your ability to see through the lanes in the split second decisions you have to make as a quarterback can make a difference. And I just think I've really come to where I think for things to work with Kyler, you need offense that's rolling him out a lot, like a lot of bootlegs, a lot of stuff where he is in the shotgun, a lot of things where he gets to see, has different types of reads. And I think he tried his damnedest. I think he did what they wanted him to do. I think he worked hard and tried to make it work. And I just think it doesn't seem like the right fit. There's just too many stretches where where the offense stalls out. And I think as I've watched Jacoby Brissett, the offense has had its moments where it's ups and downs, but I see Jacoby standing in there and throwing downfield and getting the ball out where Kyler would have maybe taken a sack or scrambled. And Brissett is who he is. He's a really, really good backup, low-end starter. He's kind of a bridge starter who's going to, if you need someone to do what we need, he's the right guy right now. But he's not the long-term answer in my view. But what we've seen with Brissett is, if you have a player who plays like Brissett but is better, right? You have that style quarterback, but you bring in a guy who's an actual, franchise quarterback. I think it's going to make a difference, right? So my take on the Kyler situation is, I do think they're going to move on from him. I think they should try to trade him. I don't fault him for anything. He did everything I think they asked him to. I just think it's not a great fit. And I want him to succeed somewhere. I'm pulling for him. So that's my take on the Kyler situation, right? Dakota, we got Dakota Bedard who's in here, who's hanging out with us. I want to say hey to you. You had so many questions with the Cardinals. I think we all do. Thank you for hanging out with us, right? So that's kind of how I feel about it. Calvin, what is up? The OG, longtime supporter of the channel. Really appreciate you, Calvin. Thank you for hanging out with us, right? Here tonight with us. So yeah. So that's my take. So at this point, I'm watching the games to try to see if they can get some things fixed. I want to see the defense continue to develop, because I do think there's some nice pieces there. I think we're seeing some nice things with the defense. We just need them to continue to get better and develop. We need to see them get healthy. We need to see Walter Nolan. I know there's word that he was hobbling around. I don't know what the injury situation was with him, but we want to see those players develop. We want to see Marvin get more aggressive, and we want to see the offense start to click, right? And, going into next season, you know, we're going to have it, some things fixed, right? And Raphael, I know Raphael has had some good conversations and some messages. He's prayed for the day that we move on Kyler. Can't wait for my new quarterback one. And again, I'm sad the Kyler era hasn't worked out the way it hoped, but there is something exciting about seeing what's next. Now, here's hoping they're going to bring someone in, and we don't have years of, really bad quarterback situations, right? But yeah, there is something to me that's a little exciting about seeing what's next. And maybe if you're a Cardinals fan, you just have to hang on that because that's what you've got all the time. So it is what it is. This season has been another disappointment. It is not what we expected. We expected more. This was supposed to be year 3 of the rebuild. This is supposed to be year they made the playoffs. It fell apart. In this offseason, my predictions. Okay, so here's my predictions about what happens this offseason. I think they trade Kyler Murray. I think they bring back Jacoby Brissett as the bridge and presumptive starter. I think they draft someone, though they might bring in free agents, like someone who they want to see if that person can, if they can catch lightning in the bottle, get their own, Baker Mayfield kind of or Daniel Jones situation. But I think it's more likely they come back with Brissett and they draft someone potentially. I think the coaching staff will be back. And I know some people, can we put Josh Petzing and Josh Fry in the air asking for thanks for being here. I appreciate you. I actually think Petzing will be back. And I know some people really don't want to hear that. I think that they're going to bring the coaching staff back and let him try with a new quarterback. And, over Parr's, his offensive line is his worry. These guys forgot how to pass protect. Yeah, like that's the big issue right now, right, this season. And I've said this before. Monty attacked the defensive line this offseason because it was the biggest weakness. And I do think he's going to take a similar approach towards the offensive line this offseason, right? And Mazaki's saying he thinks that they did kind of Kyler dirty and he's scapegoating him. Maybe, maybe so. I think they tried to make it work with him. I think he tried to make it work with them. And I just think it didn't work as well as that either had hoped. I don't know. Maybe they're scapegoating him. I do think, and listen, this is coming from someone who was a big Kyler defender. I think they need a different type of quarterback moving forward. So that's my thought, right? So, Lance, catch you later, chat. Hit the thumbs up. Please do hit the thumbs up. And we're going to wrap up here. We're not going super long tonight. It's a disappointing game. I wanted to talk about the things that I thought were at play, right? Or the things that I think contributed to this, the pass blocking and, cornerback situation. It's a disappointing game. We'll see what happens next week, but I hope you all are safe, be well. And just, listen, I know it's frustrating, but let's just remember as this might sound flowery or cheesy or whatever, but like we follow sports because of the richness it brings to our lives. We follow it to enjoy the games. We follow it to enjoy the games with people. This community, all you in the chat, like even as frustrating as this game is and this team has been, like it brings good things to my life to get to hang out with you guys, right? And the people I've met through this process. Those of you who've been long time part of this channel, those of you who are in the Discord, people that I get to collaborate with, like Jackie and Kyler and all you folks. So let's it's a frustrating season. Absolutely. But sports still brings richness to our lives, even in a bad season. So, I appreciate y'all hanging out with us. So I hope you're all well. We're going to get out of here and we will see y'all next week. So